With the 2025 federal election approaching, digital assets have become a political battleground. How will different party policies impact the industry's future? This is Crypto Corner. I'm Caroline Bowler. Joining me now to discuss is Amy-Rose Goodey, CEO of the Digital Economy Council of Australia. Amy-Rose, good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining. Can I ask you...
Thanks for having me, Caroline.
Can I ask you, how do the major political parties differ in their stance on digital assets and particularly blockchain regulation as we lead into the 2025 election?
Caroline, I actually think that they're quite aligned at the moment, to be honest with you. So they've heard the industry want fit for purpose regulation. They want legislation now. They wanted it, yes, we wanted it 2 years ago. So they've heard that loud and clear, and that is part of their priority on both sides. And often when this happens, there's a little bit of competition on both sides, and both of them are saying that their priority is to release draft legislation as soon as possible. So I would say their priorities are quite aligned in that way. And to date, particularly over the past 12 months, there's been heavier engagement on both sides as well. For those who are watching from industry, Senator Andrew Bragg was the champion for years, and you know he's been quite legendary in that regard as an advocate for the industry. But now we're seeing engagement on both sides, and I'm not optimistic. I haven't. I'm not on any hopium, but I do know that both are aligned in a better way at the moment.
I think it's reasonable to say that those of us in the industry have got a measured reaction to this increased political engagement, but you know, obviously grateful too that we're having this chance, this opportunity to really demonstrate the benefit that cryptocurrency, blockchain and digital assets are going to have on the Australian economy and the Australian GDP for the future and future generations. But do you know, and are you across perhaps the next level down on that in terms of what kind of policy proposals have they been pushing forward respectively regarding, say, the likes of crypto taxation or licensing or consumer protection, which I think is a subject matter dear to the hearts of many of us in the industry?
It is. And I think consumer protection has taken a front and centre position on the Labor side. In fact, it has been prioritised in this government, particularly on the scams framework. So consumer protection is definitely a priority, and that is written into the reforms that we've seen from Treasury. Obviously, consumer protection has to be front and centre, but I don't doubt for a second. That's why ASIC has come in and provided their updates or their views on Info 225, and we've just responded to that. So yes, consumer protection I think is high priority, and it's also probably why there's been a delay in some of the regulation, because to date, that was the Labor government's it felt like a little bit like a mandate, to be honest, and they got that through, and it did take precedence over some of the digital asset reforms that we were expecting. That's gone first, and I do think that following close behind will be digital asset reforms, but once again, not on any hopium here.
And so
on the taxation, sorry.
No, I was going to say exactly that. You know, if you look into some of the less headline topics, say crypto taxation or others, you know, have we seen anything from the Labour Party on that? Have we seen anything from the Liberal side or the coalition side? Do we know much about what their views are, or is it been strongly focused on that consumer protection as predominantly?
Yes, consumer protection is the focus. However, during our policy forum this year, taxation was one of our topics, particularly the tax implication of Info Sheet 225, which we'll be working with our tax working group on releasing those findings and those issues at a later date. The response and to Info 225, obviously ASIC has to go through their process. They have to review. They'll probably come back to industry again with another update. This is my view anyway. not in concrete, but that's the usual process. During that time, some of these issues with digital assets and taxation need to be brought forward. At the moment, we have not had a lot of updates on crypto tax for the past few years. And so industry needs clarity, Australians need clarity, and that is going to be a priority.
Yeah, and I can understand it. It's not the most attention grabbing. No one really wants to have to talk about taxation as a headline subject. But just that you did mention about 225, and obviously you're the CEO at DECA, so you were involved in the industry submission. Are there any kind of headline or bullet points you can share about the submission that was put forward from an industry standpoint?
Yeah, look, we submitted around 15 high-level points. While we didn't respond directly to the questions, there are a number of issues that came through from the months of consultations that we did, which we thought should be prioritised. And a lot of this is around the uncertainty that came of reading that info sheet. We know that digital asset reform legislation is coming. So it did feel a little bit like chicken before the egg. And so the industry wanted to put forward that there is an expectation that these reforms are coming in the second quarter of 2025. And the preference is to wait for that and to proceed with licensing when that clarity is provided. So we really wanted to highlight that reform is required first, and that's also the unreasonable commercial implications that is imposed on businesses when you start that application process for licensing while simultaneously not quite knowing if the license is actually required. And it's quite an expensive process, and getting these licenses, there are a lot of shifts in businesses that are required. There are a lot of new staff hires. There's a lot of new processes that are required in that change management process. And so the costs associated with implementing some of these changes within the business were also highlighted. I would recommend that anyone who's listening have a look at our submissions page on DECA and read through it. It's around 43 pages. It really is a really firm position from industry, but these positions can also be translated into legislation as we move forward as well. Like, recommendations can.
One of the kind of perennial questions, that every politician around the world is facing, particularly in these high inflationary times, is around productivity. And certainly, when we look at in making investment decisions in our business, we're fundamentally looking at how can this boost productivity, how can this come down to the bottom line. Do you feel that is a question for businesses here in Australia to consider when they're looking at blockchain incorporation, or for businesses here that already use this technology? What's your finger in the wind in terms of how the investment side of things is going in our space?
I wouldn't say the investment side of things is going. There's certainly a pause that we're seeing, and we've seen that for the past few years, actually. And that is a consequence of not having that regulatory certainty. I have a lot of conversations, particularly with, let's say, new members who are looking to move into the jurisdiction. They're in the APAC region and some over in the US who are looking at the jurisdiction. It is attractive as soon as it's got that clarity. We have 6 million Australians who are invested. So in digital assets. So it is a lucrative market, according to some of these conversations that I've had. However, no one is really moving in here yet until we have that certainty. And there's not a lot of innovation either. So within businesses at the moment, with that licensing reform impending, there's not a lot of clarity around how these businesses or how businesses should operate. And that adds complexity to businesses. And so a lot of businesses are just pausing at the moment. It's a wait and see attitude. What that means for Australia is we don't have any movement. We don't have a lot of new job creation. There is an opportunity, but certainly that's not happening at the moment. And overseas is a little bit more attractive as well.
Well, actually, let's have that conversation then. When you talk about international regulatory approaches, are there lessons that Australia can learn from this? What impact have we seen, for example, with the change in the United States in their government? We've seen a significant shift in their approach towards cryptocurrency and blockchain. Are there lessons that we can learn here in Australia from those kind of changes that they've brought in?
Absolutely. And that's why we're seeing the exodus is how I describe it. We do talk about the US and those changes. It's attractive as a jurisdiction. They're going to be the digital asset hub globally. That's what they're purporting is the plan. But we have other jurisdictions who have just on the down low been a digital asset innovation hub for the past few years. And I do look at Japan. I look at the recent events that I went to with their regulatory bodies, and they are grassroots in their hoodies, inviting international businesses into the room to provide clarity and an opportunity to engage and to figure out what licenses you might need in that jurisdiction. The same goes for the UAE and obviously the US as well. So there are jurisdictions that are a lot more attractive because they're more comfortable. And even if it was me at the moment and I needed to scale my business, I would have to look abroad in order to scale my business.
It certainly seems as though we've got a window of about maybe 12 to 18 months post-election to really have an impact. And certainly for us as an organisation here in Australia, we want to work through a body such as yourselves at DECA. What kind of role then do you see you play, I suppose, really in shaping the next government's policies with regards to digital assets?
I don't think we can be comfortable. So there are some views that are, as soon as if one party gets in, there'll be reform and there's promises that are being made. But at no stage, I think we can get comfortable in believing that this is the case. The role of an industry association is to keep that pressure on and constant and make sure that we are advocating and listening to our members and pushing for the reform that's needed for the industry to grow. So that will continue. Indefinitely for years to come. At the moment, it is a critical time, and DECA will be in all of the rooms, walking the halls of Canberra, speaking to politicians, and doing the work that is required. But for now, we'll just continue to advocate and to bring members together and to speak on behalf.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Amy-Rose. We really appreciate you coming along to join us here today. So this episode was brought to you by BTC Markets. This is Ticker. We'll be right back.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.